I still don't believe in nothing.
Often, neither do I.
Huh?
But then I meet someone like you, and everything makes sense.
You're too smart for me, sister. I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
One day you'll do something for the last time. You'll hug your mom for the last time. You'll call your best friend for the last time. The strange thing is, you won't know it's happening. Life almost never tells us when we've reached the end of something. It quietly lets us assume there's always another tomorrow. So we procrastinate. We put off difficult conversations. We stay in relationships we've already outgrown. We tell ourselves we'll start the business next year. We'll start going to the gym on Monday. We'll finally chase the dream once life settles down. But life never really settles down. It just keeps moving. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This is not because he wanted people to fear death, but because he believed remembering death teaches us how to live. Thousands of years later, a fictional cowboy learned the exact same lesson. His name was Arthur Morgan, and I don't think millions of people fell in love with his story because he was an outlaw. I think they loved him because they saw themselves in him. Because Arthur Morgan's greatest tragedy wasn't that he died. It was that he spent most of his life becoming someone he never intended to be. And if we're honest, a lot of us are doing exactly the same thing. At the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur Morgan thinks he knows exactly who he is. He's an outlaw, a loyal member of Dutch's gang. He robs, he kills, he survives. He doesn't spend much time questioning whether his life is good or bad because it's the only life he's ever known. Dutch raised him, the gang became his family, his purpose, his identity, and that's something every human being understands. Whether we realize it or not, our identity is often built by the people around us long before we ever decide who we want to become. We inherit beliefs, habits, dreams, expectations long before we were ever old enough to question them. Arthur didn't wake up one morning and decide he wanted to become an outlaw. He drifted into it, and most people drift into their lives too. Very few people consciously choose who they'll become. They simply become whoever their environment rewards. Psychologists have a term called identity fusion. It's when your identity becomes so connected to a group that leaving the group feels like losing yourself. The group isn't something you're a part of, it becomes who you are. And that's Arthur. He doesn't just love the gang. Without the gang, he doesn't know who Arthur Morgan is. And before you think that you would never do that, just look around. How many people choose careers because it's what their family expected? The son who became a lawyer because his father was. The daughter who takes over the family business even though she dreams of becoming an artist. Not because they truly want those lives, but because disappointing the people they love feels unbearable. Or maybe it's your friends. You've known them since high school, but every time you're around them, you feel like you're pretending to be someone you aren't anymore. You've changed and they haven't, yet you keep showing up. Because starting over sounds lonelier than staying stuck. Sometimes it's even our beliefs. Many of us inherit opinions about success, politics, religion, or what a good life looks like before we're old enough to question them. Not because we've examined them, but because they're familiar, and familiarity feels safe. Sometimes the strongest prison isn't built with bars, it's built with expectations. Arthur isn't trapped by handcuffs, he's trapped by belonging. As the story unfolds, something changes. Arthur starts noticing things he ignored for years. Dutch becomes more reckless, more paranoid, more manipulative. The promises become emptier. The plans stop making sense. Innocent people start getting hurt, and for the first time, Arthur begins to ask questions. He doesn't ask them out loud, mostly to himself. He starts to question if this is who he is and who he wants to be. And if you've ever had this feeling, you know how uncomfortable it is. Maybe you've sat in your car before work wondering, is this really what I want to do for the next 40 years? Maybe you've looked around your friend group and realized the conversations that once excited you now leave you feeling empty. Maybe you've been successful on paper, yet you feel like you're slowly becoming a stranger to yourself. These moments are terrifying because they don't just ask you to change your life, they ask you to change your whole identity. Here's the even stranger thing: knowing something is wrong doesn't automatically give us the courage to leave it. Arthur knows Dutch is changing. He sees the lies, the manipulation, and the violence. He knows the road isn't ending anywhere good, and yet he stays. Why is this? Because leaving would force him to admit that he spent decades following the wrong man. Psychologists call this the sunk cost fallacy. The more time we've invested into something, the harder it becomes to walk away. Not because it's still good for us, but because walking away feels like admitting those years were wasted. You see it everywhere. Couples stay together even after they know they should have broken up just because they've already spent so much time together. College students finish degrees they hate because they've already been there for 3 years. Business owners keep pouring money into companies they stopped believing in years ago because quitting feels worse than failing. We tell ourselves, I've already come this far, as if more time will somehow justify the time we've already lost. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stop pushing, because every day you stay in the wrong place doesn't recover yesterday. It only costs you another tomorrow. Arthur couldn't see that yet. He still believed one more robbery would fix everything, one more score, one more promise from Dutch, one more chance. How many of us tell ourselves the exact same story? I'll quit next year. I'll start Monday. I'll chase my dream after I save a little more money. And then tomorrow comes, and the next month, and the next year, and life slips away, not because we're making terrible decisions, but because we keep postponing the right ones. There's a quote by Seneca that I've never been able to forget. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Now think about it. Most of us don't treat time as something precious. We treat it like something renewable, as if every missed opportunity comes with another identical opportunity waiting right behind it. As if every person we love will always be there, as if we'll always have another birthday, another Christmas, another chance to say what we mean to say. But life doesn't work like that. Time only moves in one direction. And Arthur is about to learn that lesson the hardest way possible. One doctor's visit, one diagnosis, one moment that changes everything. Arthur's tuberculosis diagnosis changes everything. Not because tuberculosis suddenly makes him a good man, but because it shattered the illusion that he had forever. Up until that moment, Arthur lived the way most of us do. He assumed there would always be another tomorrow, another robbery, another chance to make things right, another opportunity to become the man he wanted to be. Then one conversation with a doctor changed all of that, and something incredible happened. The thing that once consumed his life suddenly became meaningless. Money didn't seem to matter. The next score didn't matter. Dutch's approval didn't matter. What mattered was character. Who would he be with the time he had left? And maybe that's why death has such a strange effect on people. Researchers have found that when we're reminded of our own mortality, our priorities often change almost immediately. We stop asking, how do I get more? And we start asking, what actually matters? Who have I become? What will people remember me for? Arthur didn't become a different man overnight. He became the man he'd been bearing underneath years of fear, loyalty, and excuses. One of the people who understands this better than almost anyone is Bronnie Ware. She spent years caring for people who knew they were nearing the end of their lives. Imagine having thousands of conversations with people who know they don't have much time left. You'd expect them to talk about money, success, status, the things we spend most of our lives chasing, but they rarely did. One regret appeared over and over again. I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. That's Arthur Morgan's story. For years, Arthur lived Dutch's dream. Dutch gave him purpose, identity, and told him who he was. Arthur simply followed. And I wonder how many of us are doing the same thing. Maybe your Dutch isn't a person. Maybe it's social media telling you what success looks like. Maybe it's your parents' expectations. Maybe it's the pressure to fit in. Maybe it's fear. Whatever it is, if you're living someone else's definition of a meaningful life, you're slowly giving away your own. We all know time is valuable, but I don't think we actually believe it, because if we did, we'd spend it differently. Here's a perspective that completely changed the way I think about life. Imagine you're 20 years old, you move away from college, then work, then you start your own family. Now you only see your parents 4 times a year. If they live another 40 years, that's only around 160 more visits. 160. That's it. Suddenly, I'll visit next month doesn't feel so harmless anymore. The strange thing about life is that we measure it in years, but we experience it in moments, conversations, birthdays, road trips, Christmas dinners, and watching a sunset. One day, without realizing it, you'll have your last one. Arthur never expected his time to become limited. Neither do we. That's why we keep postponing the things that matter the most. Something beautiful happens after Arthur accepts that he is dying. He stops trying to save his life and starts trying to save his soul. He helps strangers. He protects John and his family. He stands against Dutch. He chooses compassion over survival, not because he thinks it'll erase his past. He does this because it's the right thing to do. Redemption isn't pretending your mistakes never happened. It's refusing to let them define every decision you make afterwards. Arthur couldn't change who he had been, but he could choose who he would be next. And that's all redemption has ever been, one good decision at a time. There's another man whose story reminds me of Arthur Morgan's. His name was Viktor Frankl. Frankl survived Nazi concentration camps. He lost his parents, his brother, and his wife. Nearly everything that could be taken away from a human being was taken away from him. Yet, after surviving, he wrote something extraordinary. He said that everything can be taken from a person except one thing: the freedom to choose their attitude, to choose who they become despite their circumstances. Arthur's circumstances couldn't have been more different. The lesson is surprisingly similar. Arthur couldn't undo his crimes, he couldn't cure his illness, he couldn't buy more time, but he could still decide what kind of man would write the final chapter of his life. That's the power every one of us still has. Your past may explain you, but it does not imprison you. Character isn't revealed when life is easy, it's revealed when excuses disappear. People often ask who the real villain of Red Dead Redemption 2 is. Some say Micah, others say Dutch, but I think they're both wrong. The real villain is unconscious living. It's drifting. It's believing you'll change someday instead of today. Because very few people ruin their lives with one big mistake. They ruin them one comfortable decision at a time. One postponed conversation, one ignored dream, one more hour of scrolling, one more year staying where they no longer belong, one more excuse. Until one day they wake up and realize the life they wanted is behind them instead of in front of them. Arthur Morgan's diagnosis didn't create urgency. It just revealed the urgency that had always been there. The clock had been ticking since the day he was born. He just couldn't hear it. And neither can we. Remember at the beginning of this video, I said that one day you'll hug someone for the last time, and you won't know it's the last. The same is true for almost everything. One day you'll laugh with your childhood friends for the last time. You'll visit your parents for the last time. You'll walk out of the house you grew up in for the last time. You'll finish a chapter of your life without realizing you've already turned the page. Life doesn't announce endings, it lets them pass quietly. And maybe that's why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every day that he could die. Not because he was obsessed with death, but because he was obsessed with living. Arthur Morgan had to be told he was running out of time before he started becoming the man he wanted to be. You and I don't have that excuse. We already know. We know life is temporary. We know time is precious. The only question is whether we'll live like we believe it. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If today was the day you found out your time was limited, what would change? Who would you call? What dreams would suddenly matter? What apologies could no longer wait? Now ask yourself something even harder. If you already know these answers, why are you waiting? Arthur's redemption wasn't found in his final breath. It was found in the moment he stopped assuming he had forever. And maybe that's the lesson his story has been trying to teach us all along. The clock doesn't start ticking when the doctor gives you bad news. It starts the day you were born. The tragedy isn't that life is short. The tragedy is spending most of it believing you have more time than you do. So don't wait for a diagnosis. Don't wait for rock bottom. Don't wait until regret becomes your greatest teacher. Start becoming the person you already know you should be, because one day, whether you realize it or not, today will have been one of those moments you'll never get back.